Hi y'all, it's Kara from Transformation Mom for ABCDE, and I'm so excited. I'm going to share with you the first part of my Come Plan With Me series. This is probably actually going to get posted to my channel after part 2, but that's how things go because this video just doesn't seem to be wanting to process. So I'm going to jump right in. So for my original bullet journal, I had used Electrum 1917. What I did was in 2016, we were getting ready. My little girl was just about to turn 1, and we were looking for an apartment because her lead level was high. I had 3 other older girls that I was homeschooling, and I was the MOPS Kids coordinator for a MOPS group, and so I had a whole bunch of that, plus then a whole bunch of other hats that I was wearing. And so I knew I needed some kind of organization. So I started digging through, seeing what I could use for organization. So I ended up finding Boho Berry's site. And on Boho Berry, she uses this Electrum 1917. And so I thought that it would be fun to use that and to journal. And so that was what I originally started with. A little bit about bullet journaling. Bullet journaling is from a guy named Ryder Carroll, and he created the original bullet journal. I'll discuss with you his 3 major points of a bullet journal, and then I'll show you all the extras that you could add. The nice thing about a bullet journal is it could be as simple or as complicated as you want. It's up to you. So we're going to get right into it. And the first page that I'm going to show you is something that Ryder Carroll uses. And so this is actually the index. The index simply is every time you would put a page in your journal, you would come back here, you would write the page number and what was on that page. Then you could always go back and look through it and go back. So this is the first major thing that Ryder Carroll says is part of a bullet journal. So the second thing that he says is a key or an icon library. He only uses maybe 3 or 4 icons. If you go to his site, I'll put it down below in the description box. And I made all these. You know what? This was way, way too complicated. So that will be one of the things that you'll see that I'll change, hopefully. But there was just too many symbols. So I'm going to try to keep it simple. What I did, this is not part of Ryder Carroll's system, is that every month I wanted to be able to go look at the side here and be able to see what month it was. So I had colored in each page so that you could see that. So that was my list for that. And then this was also, you'll see a habit tracker on some of the pages, and these were the colors, so I knew what they were. Did I like it? You'll see. Not so much. So those are the first 2 parts of Ryder Carroll's system, and I will discuss more later. Now we're going to get into a little bit of what Boho Berry and others that do bullet journaling really, this is how you can make it your own. So I turned around and I set out to set my 2016 goals, and here was my goals. But of course, these goals are very measurable, but how am I going to break them down into smaller bits for the year? So this was actually how I was going to do it. And then on the second page, you can see more. Now, scrapbook pages say Christmas savings, these date nights. Some of the stuff's not colored in. Some of the stuff I actually did complete, but I never colored in it. You know why? It just was too hard for me to keep coming back here all the time. And it wasn't, these weren't really that fun. So I'm going to have to think about how I'm going to handle these for my journal for this year. This was my bucket list. So, let's see here, where's my next? You can see that I had gift ideas and wish lists. And so the nice thing about a bullet journal is you can throw all of your collections in there. You can see books I want to read, movies I want to watch, what I was grateful for. So then the next part of a bullet journal that isn't in the original Ryder Carroll method, he does add it in later, it's something called future planning. And so how are you going to future plan? So originally I had started with 4 months in the September, October, November, December on the back of this page. And you write down all your birthdays and all your holidays, and then you could also write down events that you had. So that is my original future planning. So then I started with these monthlies and these habit trackers. Now, the monthly that I originally started with just had the days, had what was going on that day, and then had dinner. It also had my husband's work schedule just kind of shoved in there. So you'll see I had to adapt this later. Here is my habit tracker. I was never very good at coming back and filling this in. Half the time I would fill it in, and I would fill it in myself, fill it in just by memory. So, yeah, it wasn't very helpful to me. You can see I had put another list that I hadn't figured out at the beginning, and it's called expenses waiting on. So here's what I purchased, a place, and a date expected, some memories, and then I was looking at like what needs improvement. Here was the way that I was handling my grocery list. So literally I would just pull this sheet off and then glue another sheet down the next when that one was full. My cleaning plan. We were living in a really tiny apartment. I really didn't have that much to clean, so that was my cleaning plan. So here is where it kind of starts. You'll see here's my period tracker, but you can see that I stopped. Guess what? I got pregnant. Wasn't expecting to get pregnant. That was God's surprise to us. So yeah, this is why that whole thing isn't filled out. So here comes the next part of what the Ryder-Carroll system is. So really it is you would write down the date and the day, and you would write down what tasks you want to accomplish that day. So here's the tasks that I wanted to accomplish, and then you check them off when you're done, and the next day you do the same. And so you can see I wrote down the weather, I have this water tracker, I have this time tracker, I have all this extra stuff. You don't have to put that in. Simply you can just write down your tasks, check them off, and then move on to the next day. Anything that you didn't get done that day, you can migrate to the next day. So again, that's the third part of the Ryder-Carroll system. So you can see that I had more collections and lists. And then that future planning that was there before wasn't quite working for me the way that I thought it would. And so I decided to switch to this Calendex. So this Calendex simply has a page number. So like page 13. And you would scroll back to page 13 and would have what is on that day. So you can see my 13s are all my reoccurring tasks. So they were the things that we knew we do every week. Say like Awana or your kids' sports practice, or maybe your school has something that's due, say, every Friday. So that's what those were. But then you can see like there's 10s in here, or there's this 49. And so you would go to those pages and it would have what it was. I hated this. This was so hard. Every month when I would have to come back and go through these, and you'll see like I eliminated my monthlies altogether because it just was so horrible to come back and try to figure these all out. So that's another thing that I need to figure out for my new bullet journal. So I had worked from the first of the month until this point of the month, and I had liked my layout, but I didn't love it. And so I decided to change to let's try this weekly layout with then my daily layouts. And I did like that a little bit better, but it still was a lot of repetition because you would write everything over here and then you would migrate stuff over to here, and it wasn't my favorite. So in February, you can see I changed my monthly layout a little bit. I added so that it was day and evening, and then my dinner list, and then my husband's schedule. What I was finding is, especially if my husband's on evenings, since I was homeschooling this year, I had to figure out my school day, how I was going to shift it to the night, especially when the nights we had stuff planned. So that was the reason for my shift. I also decided to add this February memories page to write down a little bit of what happened. Again, another collection. And then I changed to having what I would call weekly spreads that have dailies in them. So this was my whole week at a glance, but it had all my dailies in it. So it had all of my tasks, it had everything, it had my water, it had my horizontal tracker, and you can see I'm not very good at filling out these horizontal trackers at all. So you'll see that that gets abandoned pretty quickly. So in April, you can see that I wrote out my monthly, and then literally I just wrote out my tasks. And in June, I didn't even write out my monthly, I just wrote out my tasks. So you can see that I was having a hard time sustaining that level of creativity. So then in September, when I came back to it, and because school was starting and my kids, we had to have a schedule again, you can see that I had to change the layout a little bit. So again, I had abandoned my monthlies, I abandoned the habit trackers, and I put the habit trackers right here in the layout, hoping that I would do them. And I also continued with my weekly, with dailies in it. I had notes. So yeah, I really like this layout. But you can see as I move into October that it still was really hard for me to keep up with. You can see that there's a lot of blank spaces. And even I used it in December, but again, I took out some of the trackers because of things that we were doing, say, you know, it was Christmas, those types of things, but I still had a lot of blank space. So I have a lot of room for improvement. So in 2017, I decided, you know what, I'm going to get rid of this. And I was using these markers, and I was also using these colored pencils. And I said, you know what, I'm going to get rid of all of that, and I'm not going to use any of it. And instead, I'm going to do everything online. And so I did everything on OneNote, and it was better, but I still didn't like it. I wasn't crazy about it. One is that I was finding if I didn't write it down, guess what? I didn't remember it. And I also was finding that I was squashing my creativity a little bit because it was always the same thing. And so it got boring really quickly because planning, let's face it, isn't really that much fun. And then I also just was like, if I was out and I didn't have my computer with me, I wouldn't write something down and then I would forget about it and I was dropping the ball. So that's why in the next video, we'll talk about what I'm going to use this year. I hope you guys have a great day. Again, it's Kara from the Transformation Mom for ABCDE.